This word hey, mem, hey, hama, literally also means desired, coveted, but it's also murmur, growl, roar, noise, and boisterous.
Is that like the word Hamas?
No, that's het mem samic. But animals that make noises. A cow, a sheep, a chicken, a dog. Just this. But there's something about something that's desired. And this is the word for to be away from. So if this is a search, and this is a desired, but it's also something growling, how would you draw a picture of that? If something is on this track, and if something is contrary and growling, away from, different than, the most different than you can be on one track is a perpendicular track. That's the most otherwise. So you got the x-axis, you got the y-axis, you've got this and you've got that. The other interesting thing about this word is that, I think it's the word yatar, I'd have to look at, but it means balance or hypotenuse. So here's this word where you say, well, it's not even a word, the word hypotenuse doesn't even fit into this, and there's no reason to even go there. But the fact that it exists as one of the dictionary different translations, what is a hypotenuse? When you have a right angle, two absolutely contradictory to the most extreme contradiction you can get, a hypotenuse is the inferred connection between the two.
I can't even see.
Oh, you can't see, sorry. If you have a line here and a line here, and then you have the inferred connection between the lines. So what I'm saying is that in this particular, these three particular words in verse 12, the word mem hey hey means worn out, shabby, or what is the essence, or away from, to linger or tarry. It's having to do with the same pause as this reference here, this lingering, this tarrying, this delay. And I'm trying to associate the thing missing, the thing longed for here, to be the same thing as the phantom hypotenuse of this word compared to that word. And then here's this word, bene, which is my son.
I think you're going to have to describe the triangle better. I don't think anybody got that.
Could you describe the triangle?
I want you to. You're very good at it, but you didn't describe the triangle. Does anybody understand the triangle?
No.
You need to
Could you please describe it in your words?
I'll
I'll pick off of what you say.
Fred can do it.
Could you describe the triangle concept
triangle
of the hypotenuse?
is
I just want to hear it in somebody else's words so that I don't miss the connection.
Well,
I mean, it couldn't be clearer than the way you drew it there. You did it with a couple of objects on a table, but two lines perpendicular to each other imply that there's a third, a connection between the two.
Yeah, but you put 2 points. One was Yahweh, one was us. I mean, you were doing it in the form of what the adversary was, and you showed what the hypotenuse is. Is that there wouldn't be a hypotenuse, it would just be the 2 points if it wasn't for the fact that you go out of balance.
I was equating that to the bishop. Also, right, with the diagonal.
In our conversation the other day, that's what you had talked about.
Yeah, that's the point you brought in that was really interesting.
Could you go ahead and express that in those words? See, you remember it differently than where my mind is at the moment. So if you could explain it. In fact, just for being on camera, you want to come up here and explain it? Or
Go ahead, Fred,
you want to sit there?
explain it.
Come on, Fred, come on.
Interpret it because you understand what you understand, and I'm not understanding exactly how you understand.
I got you there.
Well. You were likening this to a chessboard in that conversation. And so, and you were just showing how, for instance, if we are the bishop, that our plan, our purpose for us is to run on, say, if we're the bishop on the white square, our purpose is to run on the diagonals of white squares. And it seemed to me that you tied that into this hypotenuse idea. And if we're over here looking at the rook, which is running on
Like Assyria or Egypt or somebody else's job
right,
description.
somebody else's job, then we're not fulfilling our mission, and we're not being what Yahweh intended us to be, and He can't use us as a chess piece.
So if we don't do our job description, what He called us to do,
Right.
then the game is missing
Right.
a critical piece that could be instrumental in the setup and the play of the whole thing, which is He's been strategizing the whole time.
Right.
And for Him to have a plan and say Israel's going to serve as this function, if you try to set up some chess moves and you have a key piece guarding a certain line and that piece is missing, the plan's not going to work.
Sure.
And you might say, well, it was a good plan, so I'm going to have to reorganize the board later in the game the same way and put that piece there. And so when He said, okay, go into the land of Canaan, they said, no, we're afraid. And He says, okay, it's going to take me 40 years to set this board up again. So 40 years later, He brings them back in and tells them to have the same intent, heart attitude, and you might say job description.
There's also, though, an understanding there that there are other chess pieces. And so, when we look at the other nations and we see them maybe not doing what we're doing, we have to realize, for instance, Ishmael, his descendants had a purpose. They're not the bishops running on the white lines. They're doing something different. Maybe they're the rook. So I think it helps. That analogy helps to understand the big picture.
And it's not necessarily our job to take out other players on our team because they're not having our job description.
Exactly.
I thought that the introduction of the hypotenuse is introduction of adversary that is with other Elohim. In other words, that's what comes into the picture once you focus on other Elohim. That's the way it was described when we were having our conversation. That tie for that line to come down, I mean, we don't even think about the devil. We were talking about the devil. The devil's not even thought about in the parameters by which He set up the Torah. It wasn't like the devil was ever even introduced in that parameter. It's only when you go outside of His instructions is when that calamity and all of that change happens.
So you saw the hypotenuse as being the devil?
You had described it as being.
See, the funny thing, I had one thing in mind, and it was. Now that you described it, I remember what I had said that you were talking about, but you heard something other than what I had retained as being what I had said. So it's just interesting. That's why I was asking you to describe it, because regardless of what is said, people hear sometimes different things, and it fits within the whole structure of their way of thinking, and it makes sense. But I may not recognize it as being exactly what I had said.
Maybe I said it incorrectly.
No, I'm not saying you said it incorrectly.
It was with salt and pepper shakers, it was over lunch, and one thing led to
One of those
another.
discussions.
Yeah, we were talking about the word hypotenuse, and then we got into the discussion of what the adversary, who is the devil, and why is it that, people are focused on so much about the devil and what he's gonna do to you, and in reality, it's to follow the word just like you had described, and to go back and do what He said to do, and that you are under then what He said, that's the blessings. The curses only come when you go outside of that parameter.
So,
But you tied in the hypotenuse to, what I recall, is into what the devil does. It brings you a direct connection right to Him. Ties the two ends together.
so part of what I said previously, the other talk we did earlier, was taking pieces of that and plugging it in there. So things get jumbled up when I go to reiterate them. So what we were talking about specifically, I might have said something in a certain way, and now that was an hour and a half ago, or
Sorry.
2 hours. No. I'm saying, what I had talked about that was back then, and here's this, but they're all tied together. The interesting thing is, what I'm seeing this say.
Where did you get the word hypotenuse? That's what I'd like to see. Where did you get the word hypotenuse? That's what you were describing.
I believe it's in the word yatar, yod tav resh. I mean, check.
Because the whole discussion was, what does hypotenuse have to do with it?
Right. So the word tav resh means to search, and here yod tav yod resh means excessive, superfluous, an excessive letter in a biblical word, superfluous, or superfluidity. So in other words, it's something, it's something extra.
You did pretty good, Rhonda.
Yod Tav Vav Resh is remainder, excess, superfluity, and a place that is searched. I don't see the word for, in this spelling, I don't see the word hypotenuse here. I'd have to look it up. See,
That's
sometimes,
kind of the hinge pin there.
yeah, it is. But see, the thing is, what I'm saying is that
It was the hinge pin of our whole conversation.
if you have two lines, if you have this line and this line, the thing is, you have this phantom hypotenuse. If I draw a right angle and I'm trying to, if I build something like, if you have a building and you have this big tall structure up on top and you want to build a big overhang here, what's going to keep that from falling? If you build a hypotenuse, like say with some chains connecting this to that, because you have a triangular structure, it's going to keep the thing solid. It's like building a shear wall. If you have a floor and a wall and another wall, even if you have a roof on it, it can collapse. It can tip over under a load. But if you build a triangle, which is what a truss does, whether the triangle is like that or you do X bracing, triangles can't move, they're locked in. So what I'm saying is that if you have something, a search, there's a line, and if you have something away from that, something that people growl about, or something which is being craved, if it's contrary, then that's if you have something that's being searched for, if you have a contrary voice, then that's a right angle, something distinctly different.
That's what you described. You had us and Yahweh, and you had Hasatan up here. And you had said that because that's out of what the bond was between who Yahweh is with us, with this beginning and this end, this line, that when you put them up there, it infers the hypotenuse.
Right, I'm
which
saying there's a
causes it to be
phantom
a whole
hypotenuse here.
different diorama of how you live. It's no longer this between us and him. It's us and him and that outside thing. That's what you're describing. And because of that, it binds us into this whole nother, all the curses, all the things that Hasatan has brought upon us from going outside the guides of us and Yahweh the way that he intended us to be. That's what you said.
Well, there must be some truth there, and I just have to...
There's a salt shaker and a pepper shaker and the creamer, and it all came together. Which goes back to your first talk. It talks about that.
Well, I'm not negating that.
Those are your words.
Let me read what I have on this here. If there's
I was there. I heard
cer-
this.
let me say this. One thing I've found in trying to do this word study is that seldom, like your Bible there, where they say here's 2 or 3 meanings that this word can have. The interlinear basically plugs in one word meaning and then shows you a Strong's Concordance number where you can reference these other things. The previous verses that I had up here, trying to show you there's these different ways to read into it, any one word can get so complex. And then what I'm trying to show you here about the phantom hypotenuse, I thought I found one word, but I didn't, for some stupid reason, I didn't write down where that word was. It had something to do with this word here. But I'd have to look through the dictionary and plug in other prefix letters to find where it is, and I didn't do that for some... That was, like you said, it was this principal word, and I don't have it here.
It's the crux of the whole.
Gosh.
It's between the salt and pepper shakers.
It is.
Well, I'll have to look that up and do better to have that written down. Why do I do things like that?
You're good.
Gosh. Anyway, the point is, if this word here, ha-zahar, this is where you get the word for Zohar, which is brilliant shining. So this is the shining. It also basically means warning or take heed. So if you're driving down the road and you see a flare or you see a blinking light, stop, slow down. That's what this word here. So you could say, just like that one's an exclamation point, this is like another big exclamation point with, you know, just what do you do to, warning, danger, skull and crossbones, something to get people's attention. And this is the word asha, which is similar to this, it's just that's a plural suffix. And again, the same way Elohim can not necessarily mean multiple deities, but it can mean just the greatest, the most extreme. You could almost, yeah, if you say ashot, that's deeds or actions. This is the word sefer, which is the word for scroll or book. And this again is the plural form. Haravah, this word here is the word for the greatest and the highest and the best, which is the same as this word here. This is the word ayin, which we had written up there, which is the word ain't, which means doesn't exist, it's null. And here's the word for hide the words and seal the book until the time of the end. This is the word for end. And if you look up that word, it also means wake up. If you put a yod in front of it, yukutz. So this is where you say, if you're sleeping and all of a sudden you wake up, you've come to the end of sleeping. If you're going down straight and you run into a T intersection where you have to turn in another direction, like this right angle, it's the end of that straight route. Now you're doing something else. So this word kutz as being the end is saying there is no end to the track of what track? The track we were just on. Doing the sefer, the sephirim, doing what the greatest things of this. Sefer is also where we get the word cipher, which is where you get connecting the dots, or telling the story. Abraham was told to sefer the stars. Vav, Lamed He Gimel. This word lahag is where we get the word in Greek for logo. This is L, this is where our letter E, and this is our letter G. Reading that direction is where you get the word in Greek for logo, as in, even our picture doing artwork is a logo. In Greek, that's where you get the word logos with an S for the word for word in John 1. It's where we get the word loquacious and logaria, which is so many words of speaking, like what we're doing here. It also, lamed is the prefix letter, so you get this action, or the verb root is hey gimel, and like what we got with that other word here, where we had to add the hey to find out what the word really means. If you get this other letter hey here, in the dictionary you'll see that this word means navigate, steering wheel, helm, rudder, to pronounce a word, to spell words phonetically, to think, to meditate, to ponder, and where we get the word then for musing, where you get the word for amusement or music. So where you're thinking, using words to navigate, that's all this word. Then you get this word here, haravah, is exactly the same word as that, which is exactly the same word as that. Remember, it's where you get resh-bet is where you get the rabbi, which is also the word for archer, so which is one who sends an arrow. And then you have to picture some of these Hollywood movies where they show you an army sending out a hail of arrows, where they're just 10,000 arrows come flying through the sky. So there's also the word to multiply in aspect or quantity, so it's the highest and greatest and the best and the most, like we would say, the most numerous. So like a hail of arrows, an archery assault. Same word, the highest and best and greatest. And then here's this word, yod gimel ayin tav, which means product of labor, toil, weary, or exhaustion. And then here's the word basar. Have you ever heard of the basara? The basora, you know what word that is? You know that? Nobody's familiar with that word?
Good news.
Good news. It's the word translated gospel. It's also the word for flesh. So when Yeshua said, eat my flesh, this is the word that he would be saying. And the word to eat or consume is the word aleph-taw, a call. And the letter aleph is a prefix, basically means I will, and kaf lamed is all. So something about I will consume, I will eat it all. Eat what all? His flesh. Why would he say eat my flesh and drink my blood when drinking blood was an abomination? So the word drink basically is where we get the word to set as a foundation, or to be, sit down or be intoxicated. And blood is the word dam, dalet mem. Dami is where we get the word dummy, as in crash test dummy, which was a likeness of a human that you can do a test on for, crashing cars. But the word dam literally means silent, but it also means image and likeness. So you could say to drink my blood, another way to read that in Hebrew is to be intoxicated with my likeness. And to eat my flesh I will thoroughly bet shin resh. Shin resh is a prince, a poet, a singer, a bracelet chain, and the bet can be seen as the prefix letter means in the condition. So in the condition of a poet, a singer, a prince, a bracelet chain, what comes to my mind is that back the singer-songwriters of the 1960s protesting against the war or encouraging people to be loving, they took heavy matters and made them light. So if you take the weighty matters, politics, religion, life, philosophy, science, and make them light, put them into poetry or music, you're basically doing what shin resh is. If you take the weighty matters of life and death, wisdom, success, knowledge, understanding, the rise and fall of empires, and you seek out the navigating of words, it's the greatest toil to be able to simplify the heavy things into like a beautiful bracelet chain of good news. To put this all together, I think that for Yeshua to say, eat my flesh and drink my blood, is essentially what we're doing here, in that his likeness is the thing, ayin dalet ayin tav. There's the ayin tav, and the whole idea of the ayin dalet is to say, to understand the door and to understand the terms of the covenant is that the terms of the covenant are the door. The door that he claimed to be is the embodiment of the terms of the covenant. He didn't do away with anything. And so if we could take these complex, heavy matters, analyzing them like an engineered structure, and putting them down into a simple little song or a simple little beautiful bracelet chain, is the greatest expense of any labor we can do on the face of the earth. There's something about this which seems to, another way to read this, I'll just read what I have here. There's more than enough by implication, the phantom hypotenuse of these things. If we look at everything that he built into the structure, there's this phantom hypotenuse, which is his son, which is Yeshua. There's more than enough by implication to make the connection. The clamor is not about searching for my son. The blatant warning is, do what it says. The most significant instruction without end, no detour. But in the spelling of words, a study by meditating on pronunciation, there is amplified profitability for whoever makes that effort as a wordsmith. This other thing I've written based on this is the The best book ever made, without equivocation, facilitates meditation on navigating the spelling of words, phonetics, pronunciation. The most significant toil while in the flesh is being a wordsmith. That seems to be what this is saying. So Solomon, for all his great wealth and all his great wisdom, and he could do anything he wanted, which is what the book of Ecclesiastes is all about, pursuing the best parties, the best building projects, the best that armies and navies could accomplish for him. He found that studying words while, you might say, another way to read this, while in the flesh, the study of words, so that you can hear and guard and do what he said is the greatest of all our pursuits. And I think that Yeshua was validating that endeavor. And then the last sentence, verse 14, truly, let me back up to 13. To summarize the entire matter, actively pay heed, here regard the Creator Elohim. As reverence due, do whatever degree of awesomeness he has allowed to be perceptible. Whatever the extent of what he's made perceptible in any country, in any culture, in any generation, he gave to Israel the purest, cleanest, most fullest in the alphabet, but everybody else has only a partial. Something's missing. But to everything he has allowed us to be seen, all that is possible, listen as one who intends to obey. And another word that's embedded in there is, that means man the crew of his command, as if it was to your merit, as if you were the part of an elite team whose responsibility was his eyelid. And here's that other verse talking about the eyelid. Imagine if you were the crew. I mean, you know, the human body is composed of all these different other bugs and organisms and systems. And if your job was to be his eyelid, protecting his eye, that's what he has created for Israel to be. And so Israel, he said, is his like, is the pupil of his eye that he will protect. Anyway, protect his pupil from harm, from sabotage. This very matter is the essential duty of every man. And then there's the whole word for Adam, ha-adam, is actually can be translated as the redness. And Adam is also red, and it's also man, so you could say the redness of the red man, the very essence of being human, is to do what he says here, to guard these matters. And whoever chooses to guard his matters is essentially the redness of the red man. Truly, verse 14, truly every incident, purpose, product, endeavor, occupation, every deed, every action, the Almighty brings to true account actuality, sanity, smooth and clear, including every hidden or unknown aspect. And it says whether good or if evil. So if you say, well, that's tov ve'ra, like the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. So what is good? The last two words here. The word good is tov, which is tet, vav, bet. So bet is an object, tet is something round, like a round basket. And bet is some kind of a container that you can put something in. So one way to analyze the spelling of the word tov, like we were looking at the word earlier, that other word, is in a basket that's fit to put something in. A basket by design is something to put something in. But if the basket fails, it's a lousy basket and it's no good. So good by definition is a basket that contains what it was designed to contain. So good is to perform or have the capacity, capability to perform the function for which it was designed. So the redness of the red man, Adam doing as he was designed to do, is one who Shema and Shomers, that which Elohim has made perceptible. Yirah, which is the word for reverence or fear, but it's also as he has put on exhibition. In other words, to whatever extent he's made himself perceptible, guard that and keep that. And if somebody else doesn't have the same perception, maybe they're a different chess piece. But the word for evil is reshayin, and that's the same word as friend and companion. And so as we talked last week, It's also bad, wicked, evil, harm, calamity. It's also thought, intention, and purpose. Why would the same word for friend and companion and associate be the word for evil, harm, intention, purpose, calamity? When you intend harm to your companion, that's evil. And so it says here, the last words of Solomon's entire, everything he had to tell to the assembled hearers is, we're all going to stand in front of the Almighty one day, and He's going to take everything we did and see whether it's fit to contain the occupation we were handed, or whether somewhere in our heart we had intended evil to our companions. And everything's going to be weighed and measured. It's the intended evil or the capacity to contain as a fit basket what he had done. And a basket is to handle a load, like that other word I mentioned, it's not in this verse, it's in another verse, the word amad, which is positioned standing to bear the load imposed upon it, like someone would design a structure with posts and chains, and it's all structural, going back to the Samic. Everything has a structural engineering design. And so the fractal model, going back to this, is that anywhere you look in anything that he made, it's the same pattern again and again and again.
In this context, you had brought out a phrase, the rules.
The rules rule, overruling all else.
Overruling all else.
So he had designed all this, amad, standing, so that the devil has no place.
Mm-hmm.
The devil cannot mess with what Yahweh designed. And I think what we were talking about at the table at lunch the other day, that's what we brought up, is to say, as long as we are fit to tov, containing what Yahweh said, you're the vessel to contain this, the devil has no place.
Right.
He says, this is the Yashar Derek, the straight path, walk on it. Israel, this is your attire, the tailor-made garment, the robes of righteousness. Wear this, walk on this, speak this, think this, be this, and the devil has no place. He can't touch you unless he can pull you off the place, in which case you can be his victim. So to walk on the straight path is to say, I don't see the devil has any place to do anything, because Yahweh's rules rule, and the devil can only have authority when he twists the rules. But his rules, no matter what, so his rules can't be twisted. And so when Yeshua said in the book of Revelation, anybody who makes and crafts falsehood has no place in my kingdom, it's because his kingdom works the way he set it up. And so therefore, when his own church tells us that things have been twisted, distorted, eliminated, erased, modified, changed, not true. That means it's of the devil. It's of the adversary to modify what he said can't be modified. So that means with confidence, trusting his words, I can say that I have nothing to do with that ecclesiastical organization of those bishops, because they're not on the prescribed path they were given.
Well, and what you said earlier too is that, I mean, truth is so important. People think, I don't have to worry about it anymore. Truth is so important, because before Yahweh could even come to the party, he says, preceding him, like you said, was truth and kindness. That you can't even have him be a part of anything that you do. That's the part of how you know if the devil's going to be involved or not. You have to start with truth and kindness. And then when you talked about what his throne was based on, and the righteous judgment, and was it Emmett and truth? I'm sorry.
That's Psalms 89:4.
But
He said, the foundation of his throne is Mishpat and Zadokah, which is perfect balance of righteousness, where the righteousness will yield victory and deliverance and salvation. And his throne sets on that, which is to say, he set everything up in perfect balance so that when righteousness is done, victory is had. Where corruption is done, losing, destruction, annihilation will be had. And it says, Emet and Chesed precede his countenance,
right,
or
so
Al
where Emmett
Kaneh.
has to precede his countenance. I mean, to even have him be.
If you want him here, thy kingdom come. As soon as he shows up, balancing of scales will happen and Tzadikah will be paid.
But if,
But
but if there's not truth
if there's no
being
truth
spoken,
and justice, he's not showing
then
up.
who's at the party? That's the hypothesis.
The faker,
Right.
the jester, the
Right.
wily
I mean,
coyote.
that's really profound.
So whoever, if truth and justice, I mean, if truth and kindness are not being, you might say, entertained by us, then Yahweh's not going to show up. That's the way I read Psalms 89:4, which means that if somebody shows up in his name, that he is allowed to show up because there's no truth and kindness happening, it's the adversary. Even if he goes by the name of Jesus Christ, or the Holy Spirit, or God the Father, anybody that shows up where truth and kindness hasn't been welcomed can't be him according to Psalms 89. So therefore, when somebody changes his name, changes his day, changes his word, changes the covenant, changes everything, and it's no longer true, he can't be the guy that's there, even though there's signs and wonders happening, like, was it Deuteronomy 13 talks about that? About the false prophet, if somebody prophesies and the things happen, but they try to lead you to regard some other Elohim, it's not from him. It's a test to see whether we'll go ahead and go along with it.
But what you said too, when we were talking about how you said, signs, it's like you don't even regard that. Because there is no other Elohim. So you don't even regard that. The signs and wonders and all this, but don't go looking at there, don't go running, don't
Signs
chasing.
and wonders can't be the
can't be
validation of truth.
Because like you keep, when you come back and you said there is no, it's like there's no Elohim, when you're on that wavelength, you can't, there is no introduction of Satan into the party at all when you're with Yahweh because there is no other Elohim.
So the reason why some of us have chosen volitionally to cease the celebration of Christmas, Easter, Sunday,
Yes.
Halloween, those things, is because it doesn't fit within his paradigm. He did not institute them, and public knowledge is that they are a conglomeration of an amalgamation of various cultures of various deities.
And worshiping other Elohim,
Worship-
which allows their curses and blessings to be upon you as well.
And he
In their
said,
realm,
Yahweh
right?
said to his people, he said to Israel, and if you don't want to be Israel, you can do whatever you want, it doesn't matter. You'll stand to reckon whether it's Tov or Ra. But he said to Israel, do not even mention their names, which is to say, if name is also Shem, which is telling their stories, which is what the word Sefer means, is to cipher, book, narrate, tell a story, do not keep telling their stories. So I've seen things on the internet that says, here, let me tell you the names of all these other deities and what their stories are and where they came from. You know, the Norse,
We know
the
all that.
Oriental, it's like, it doesn't matter. Stop. I'm not going to sit there and try to listen and try to remember and organize and catalog as an encyclopedia all this information on my mind. Lou White's book, Fossilized Customs, okay, there it is if you want to look at it. I'm not going to put any effort towards remembering it because he said not to. So to sit there and go through the Christmas traditions, well, they seem to be fun when I was a kid. They seem to be nice American culture, but has nothing to do with it. And if I want to be the role of his bishop on his path, be on these spaces, and navigate this course, the Ravah, the highest and greatest pursuit, expense of any toil that somebody can do while in the flesh, it's like, gee, right here, this is studying ancient Hebrew. The highest and greatest expense of any labor, navigating his words according to phonetic letter by letter, while in mortal humanity. That's the way I choose to interpret this sentence. So to me, if that's the greatest endeavor worth of all our efforts, then it's like, well, though I can't tell you what the benefit is specifically, if he says it's the greatest, that's why I can say, hey, study Hebrew. Why? Because it's the most worthwhile effort anybody can do? Why? Well, I don't necessarily have a calculated payoff. It's going to be worth X number of dollars at the end of X number of hours. All I can do is trust that that's what these words mean.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's about where I was going with this. Does anybody else have anything they want to throw into the video? Aaron has something you want to throw into the video?
Probably for another video.
A what?
Probably another subject for another video.
Oh, okay.
Can you read this all together and put it together in a sentence, which it carries the whole thing through without
Oh,
stopping?
boy.
Regardless of the culture, regardless of how much light or awareness has been allowed or given to any culture for any time, any nation, any people, because of any blessing or any curse. Regardless of any of that, to make sense of whatever Yahweh has allowed you, to give honor and reverence to the maker of the universe, to regard what he said and then do it, is the greatest and best thing. But to be Israel is one who was given a duty, a responsibility to be able to navigate each letter. That was Israel's job. And if somebody else says, hey, I was born a Gentile, I don't want to do that, so don't do it. I don't care, but I have imposed upon myself because I see it as a viable option. And if somebody says, oh, come on, that was done away with a long time ago, it's like, okay, see you later. It's kind of like the picture of Pilgrim's Progress. You know, John Bunyan wrote that. He starts on his trek and he stops off at the local pub, and they try to distract him by saying, hey, what's the bother? What's the worry? Just have another drink, sit here and relax with your friends. And he felt a compulsion to get up and go. But the trek that he was on, he did singularly, solitarily, but it was grievous, and it was challenge and trouble and obstacle after one the next. But do you remember what was at the end of his road? It's been a long time since I read the story. Huh?
I haven't read that in 20 years.
Well, what was at the end of his road was he finally, got to the heaven that he was, it's the end of your life. It's like, I don't know if I'll take another breath. Anything can happen, so I can only be responsible for my present conscious state at the moment. I mean, didn't you say that somebody just all of a sudden, your friend's son just all of a sudden is in such a desperate shape, it can come out of nowhere. Boom. I mean, you can be standing there minding your own business, just about your task, and all of a sudden, from the sky, a 16-foot 2x6 clap you in the head. It can break your neck.
What do you know about that, Fred?
That happened just the other day, but still fit and able to think. Thank you, Yahweh.
Your skull
It
didn't
hit
get
him
cracked.
It hit him more than
Skull
once.
didn't get cracked.
That's right. What's that?
It hit you more than once.
Yeah.
Bounce back.
I'm just saying, anything can happen at any time, so to make the best out of everything he told us by saying, okay, if he says this is the best to study his words and do them, then hey, let's study his words and do them. So every video here on Mountain Air 7 is for the task of saying, does anybody want a piece of this? Here's a practical method, a little bit of insight on how to hear what he said and do it. And if anybody else wants to kick and scream and cause grief and disrupt the study, they can take it outside and yell and scream all they want. We're not criticizing or blaming anybody.
It's just what the word says.
Just trying to do what he said.
This is a very personal walk. And, within the Hebrew roots Messianic movement is this clamoring for unity, that we've all got to get on the same page.
Oh, gee.
And I'm struck with how much truth has been sacrificed for the sake of unity. And yet what I hear Solomon calling us to is truth, the pursuit of truth above all else.
Well, what do we call ourselves? Because people are always asking, are you Jewish? Are you this? Are you that? What are we? What do you call ourselves?
That's a different subject. but-
Whole new subject.
What do you call yourself?
I don't answer the question.
Okay, there you go. That's a good answer. See, if somebody else says, what are you calling themselves? What do you call yourselves?
Kind of box you.
They are trying to box you into their pigeonhole.
I always say I'm a studier of the word.
There you
That's
go.
what I am. I mean, that's what I do.
Children of the Most High.
There's a good label.
Sword observance, not good.
Huh?
It's the same thing. Torah observant. You know, if you're
Well,
observing
you could
these
choose to
words.
put that label on yourself, but then if they don't have a pigeonhole, they're gonna either take that and make a new hole and stuff you in it,
Yeah.
or redefine
Well,
what that means
and
and
they-
stick it in
a
like,
lot
oh,
of
you're a
people-
They want
Judaizer
some
Yeah,
kind of
well,
label
that
on you.
Torah is-
You know,
A lot of people believe that Torah is equated to keeping the Jewish law, not
nobody
keeping-
knows how to,
Nobody
see,
knows.
you have a definition of certain words, other people have a different definition,
definition.
sometimes for the same
Your
words, but a
ignorance
completely different definition.
Their ignorance is not my problem.
But then don't answer the question according to their ignorance. You have to either give them words that don't have a definition, in which case they have to find another thing, a place to put you, or you have to give them a definition and redesign their
Hey, Terry,
box of pigeonholes.
Terry,
It's just a bad thing to play into unless you really
I'm
want to go
cold
there.
in here.
I just tell everybody
Probably gonna
that
wrap
if
the
you,
video up.
if you end up on a deserted island and the Torah falls down before you and you open it up and you read it, whatever you read, you do. That's, I mean, you're just reading it, you're reading it the way it says it, and then whatever it says you do, you do.
But
That's
what,
not added books, it's just strictly the Torah in its earliest known language as you can, far back as you can get it and acquire it, and whenever you read, you do. So if it tells you to keep Sabbath, you keep Sabbath. If it tells you to celebrate these things throughout all your generations until heaven and earth pass away, then you do it. If it tells you to eat a certain way, you do it.
pretty simple.
Yeah, it's not for any reason to be a goody two shoes. It's just because these are the instructions. It's the instructions to the handbook, to the device. It's like having a blender and reading the instructions. And here's how it works. It's just the guidebook on how to live.
The funny thing is with this bishop thing, literally the hat of the bishop, mitre, the Pope wears, came from the model of the hats that the priests of Dagon, the fish god, wore. And they took some kind of big fillet or halibut, you know, and the fish head was up here, and the back of the fish hanging down there, and it's like, I guess that's what they used to do, so,
Just for the hell of it?
just for the halibut.
Well, it's a good look. I've seen those pictures.
It's like, you know, all the different classes of priests have different kind of headgear. You know, if you look through the world history, it's just kind of interesting. So to say, what do you call yourself, is to say,
It's the
which kind of hats do your priests wear? That's basically you're saying, which classification can we throw you under? And it's like, that's somebody else's game, it's not mine, so I don't even want to go there.
That's in Mesopotamia.
So your answer that you don't answer is a pretty good answer.
Yeah.
Well, usually, if I do say anything, I just say we just follow what the Bible says.
Basically what happened.
That's a good answer.
We saw the fish poop.
Anyway, did you have anything else you want to throw into the video before it goes up on the Mountaineer 7?
No, I'm good.
Okay, well, I guess that's Shabbat Shalom then.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shalom.
Hallelujah.
Thanks, Eric.